Today is the 32nd Sunday of the year. Our gospel text is Mark chapter 12, verses 38 through 44. In that text, we hear Mark tell of the behavior of the scribes. Jesus condemns them for their pretense, their hypocrisy. And I think we should note in passing, he's not condemning scribes per se. He's condemning a certain kind of behavior of which we all can be guilty. Secondly, he speaks of the poor widow who puts a tiny amount in the temple donation box. And he praises her for her generosity. I think we have here an invitation to a reflection on spirituality and religion, how they complement each other, how they are different, and how important each is to our life. Spirituality can be thought of as living relationships. Relationships that are alive. Some relationships are dead, or even death-dealing. Living relationships. And it's about living the relationship. It's about commitment, choice, effort, work. There are 4 relationships in our lives, all of us. This is the core of what it means to be human, right here in spirituality, in living relationships. The primary relationship that gives context to the other 3 relationships is our relationship with God. Now, we may have different names for God: higher power, the no-thingness, the abyss, Atman. All of us have to relate to that which we can't control, the wider reality that is life before us. In our Christian tradition, we believe that God has been revealed in Jesus of Nazareth. The incarnation is central. The outpouring of the Holy Spirit, the presence of Jesus in our lives daily, makes our relationship with God tangible, part of our everyday existence. That is the context within which our humanity unfolds. Our relationships are played out. The other 3 relationships are relationships with ourselves. And concretely, that's where we all have to start. The truth of what we are experiencing. The truth of what is happening. The truth of choices we are making. Hold ourselves accountable. Don't get into self-deception and evasion. We must constantly address that because we're all geniuses at self-deception. The relationship with self, with who I am and what's happening in my life, is crucial to the other relationships with God, with other human beings, and with the world at large, creation. Pope Francis has made us very aware of the latter in Laudato Si. That's a relationship that we've tended to ignore or even abuse. Fratelli Tutti, the sequel to Laudato Si, published last year, is also a reminder of how relationships permeate our lives and constitute us as human beings, for better and for worse. At the time of Pope John's becoming the Pope, he started to address his encyclicals to all people of goodwill. I believe this is a watershed moment in the life of the Church, when we began to recover, to retrieve, to become aware once again of the significance of relationships, not only internal to the Catholic Church, but relationships within the world. I'll come back to that point because it's a crucial one, I think. So what is religion? If spirituality is living relationships with God, self, other people, and the world at large, religion is the concretization of that. Realistically, living relationships demand structure. You can't simply go around saying, oh, let's love one another. Let's have good relationships without structure. And this is where it often comes unstuck. This is where the rubber meets the road, because it's hard work to build institutions and structures and have rituals and symbols, creedal formulae and rules and regulations. Also necessary to life, but so messy. It's hard to get agreement and to get everybody involved in a dialogical way, journeying together. But that's the challenge. And that's where religion resides. Religion is one of the structures, not the only one, but one of the structures which is intended, implicitly or explicitly, it is intended, its raison d'etre, is to enable relationships with God, self, other human beings, and the world at large. When religion becomes forgetful of that primary purpose, it loses its soul. Religion then tends to become an ideology. It ceases to be religion, in fact. It masquerades as religion, but it's an ideology. And ideologies are simply worldviews where the holders of those worldviews are intent on making the world conform to that worldview. When those who claim to be religious have in fact become ideologues, they cease to be religious. They cease to be about concretizing spirituality, about incarnating living relationships. They're about imposing a worldview. They're non-dialogical. They're not mutual. They cannot abide the other or difference or diversity. When religion maintains its soul, when it is about living relationships, dialogue is natural. Hospitality is natural. Reaching out to the other is natural. Trying to make the world conform is against the grain. It doesn't belong. Jesus today condemns the scribes for their long robes and their behavior, their pretense. They have turned religion into an ideology. I think it's fair to say that within our Catholic history, there's been a certain amount of this. At times, more than a certain amount. I think clericalism is a particular manifestation where privilege and power are claimed instead of service and mercy. Service and mercy are the natural corollaries of a religion that's grounded in relationships. Privilege and power is the natural corollary of religion become ideology. It ceases to be religious. We are facing that precise situation today in the Catholic Church, the recovery of relationships, the recovery of the raison d'etre of religion in general and the Catholic Church as a religion in particular. The way out of the sad situation we've created for ourselves is the way back into relationships, everywhere, in all things, all the time. To connect, to seek common ground, to promote genuine conversation, to discover mutuality, to be with rather than against other people. The gospel in which Jesus speaks hard words about the behavior of the scribes is a gospel that's relevant as ever for us today. Those hard words can apply to some aspects of Catholicism. Finally, you would have heard people, as I have more than once, say today, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Whether they realize it or not, I think they are pointing to the same thing that Jesus was pointing to. they don't find the structure that we call church, that we call religion, speaks to them, nurtures their relationships. Now, I'm being a bit generalized here, but I think implicit in that I'm spiritual but not religious is this issue. The way beyond that is the way into relationships. Not to try and impose a worldview, not to be ideological, but to be dialogical, be relational, in fact, on the ground, today, in the simple and most practical ways. Spirituality, humanity at its core, is about living relationships. Religion, at its core, is about incarnating, protecting, nurturing, living relationships.